Hello, everyone. Welcome to another recording that I have for you guys. In this video, I just wanted to give you a quick review of your midterm exam that's happening in a few days. No, I mean in a few weeks. So right now we are in the reading week, and I wanted to give you this video so that way you can start preparing for your midterm. The midterm is scheduled on October 27th, Monday, and you guys have a reading week October 13. Then October 20th, I'm not available for in-class lecture, so that is the reason that I'm posting this video, so you guys can listen to the video, prepare yourself for your midterm exam as well. I have posted all the answers for all the chapters that we are covering in the midterm exam. And also for the week of 20th, we are scheduled to complete chapter 16 as well. So I have posted a regular or separate video for chapter 16 as well. So after you go through the midterm review, and I prefer that you also go through chapter 16 as well. I will not cover 16 as extensive as the other chapters, but there probably be few multiple choice questions that I'll pick from chapter 16 because it's supposed to be part of the first part. But I don't want to emphasize much on that for two reasons. One, we won't have a time to capture or do the homework question, and the second piece is that you have other chapters which are also important, so I'll rather be give you more weightage on those chapters and maybe push chapter 16 towards your final exam, where I can give you some question from there in your final exam, and then we'll just focus mostly on the other chapters that we have covered in person as well. So your midterm exam is scheduled on October 27th, and it's in class. And if there's anybody who has the accommodation approved, please send me an email, please. That way, I'll make sure that I'll arrange the test for you guys in the test center, and then yeah. So I think it's then you know the process. So your schedule exam is on Monday, which is going to happen during the class time. I'll give you a little bit more brief about the format and the timing at the end of the review. So what I have done for the review is I've broken down the topics chapter by chapter. So you will go back and make sure that you go back to your notes and do review the topics that we talked about. So everything that up to this point is covered, plus part of chapter 16, which I'll talk at the end. Chapter 9 is focused on the calculation of your overhead and also using absorption and variable cost. So these are the four different learning objectives that I felt is very important, even though you're accountable to make sure you know everything from all from this chapter. You can skip the appendices for your midterm exam. We'll strictly focus on the chapter. First thing, the denominator level. So we need to understand how the denominator level works for the calculation of overhead. So there are different methods. We want to make sure that we understand those ones. Then we're looking at some of the theory, which is the cost pricing, the performance evaluation. How does this affect? What are the factors that the companies look at for the capacity for the denominator method, as like which method to be picked up? There are three different methods we talked about: theoretical, practical, and then there was another one as well. So make sure you go through them and understand on what basis the management will pick one versus the other. The important topic we have is doing the income statement or doing the costing using absorption costing as well as the variable costing. So make sure you understand the difference and make sure you understand how to calculate the product cost using absorption costing as well as variable costing as well. Okay. So you need to know the difference, you need to know how to come up with the product cost, and then after that you allocate that to your cost of goods sold using the product cost that you calculated, and use that for your inventory calculation as well. So this is an important topic. I'll definitely would like to pick one question from here and test you to give you an income statement or give you the numbers and then ask you to do an operating income using one or both. And remember, at the end we also did a reconciliation as well to see why the income or the inventory number is different because some of the cost is capitalized over using the absorption costing, and you will able to identify that and then show that in your reconciliation report as well. Then we have chapter 10. In this one, we talked about the difference method, about the use of high-low method, as well as some of the other non-quantitative method for evaluation of the cost behavior, understanding how to estimate the different costs using those behaviors as well, the steps that we used for using the quantitative analysis for those calculation of variable and fixed cost. We also look at the mixed cost as well and see how we can differentiate and calculate. So again, very good chapter, and I'll definitely will pick one question from as well, using variable versus product, variable versus fixed cost, and using the high-low method to allocate or calculate the mixed cost as well. And then a lot of theory which talks about the qualitative aspect, the cost drivers, how does the cost driver affect the impact, the calculation of those numbers that we have for variable and fixed cost. Okay, moving on to chapter 11. So, chapter 11 talks about the relevant and irrelevant cost for decision making purposes, and those decision making purposes could be a short term and long term. So, we looked at that, and then there was different aspects we looked at. For example, buying new machine versus buying a new machine and replacing it with from the old machine. Like, you look at the relevant cost, ignore the sum cost, and if it's a opportunity cost, you may have to include or not depending on the situation as well. Special orders, we did talk about the department profitability as well. We talked about processing a product further or not, right? So there are different things we talked about in this chapter. So this is again a great chapter for us to look at, and definitely a question from here will be there, because it is important that you understand the calculation behind those decisions the company make as well. So I'll definitely will go back and revisit the homework question that I given you. This chapter is one of the chapter which is very unique. I cannot say that focus on one topic versus the other, because when I do a quantitative analysis, it could come out with replacing an equipment, doing a special order and pricing for that, having two segments, one is more profitable than the other. What do you do? uh, Closing the segment. There are various things that we talked about, so I'll definitely will say that make sure you practice each of the individual topics, and make sure you know what are the things that you're looking at. The bottom line is that when you're looking at the cost, you wanted to consider the one that has minimum, and when we're looking at the profitability, you always want to look at the cost, or I mean the one that has the higher profitability to continue. The other thing that you also look at or need to differentiate is the relevant versus irrelevant cost. So if there's any fixed costs that are common, we can simply ignore it because it's irrelevant for decision making. So always remember that is an important piece which I feel most of the students will miss, because they simply include everything. So just bear in mind you only need to include the costs that are relevant for that particular decision. Bottleneck, if you have a constraints, like, for example, if you know that you're in a full capacity and you cannot add anything, so you need to consider before you make a decision, okay, well, if you can produce it in house and you have a capacity, you need to consider that as well. So theory of constraint is very important. When there is a constraint, you always pick the contribution margin not on per unit but on a scarce resources. So if I say that the laborers are scarce, that you can not have anybody works more than 5,000 hours in a month, that means your constraint is there. So when you look at the contribution margin, you have to look at the contribution margin on a constraint basis, like per hour basis versus constraint on per unit, and you pick the product that you want to continue to produce more is the one that gives you the higher contribution margin per scarce resources, whatever that scarce resources is, it like a raw material, labor, the machinery hours, whatever that it is. So again, great topic, one question topic. So my aim is to have one question from each of the chapters that we are going to talk about. Chapter 13 about pricing. Again, this is great topic as well. We know that there are three different ways to do the pricing. One is the cost plus, another one is a market, and then the third one is where you're looking at the life cycle of the product as well. So all those topics are important. So you may have a few topics covered in a multiple choice, and maybe a question emphasizing on one of the topic in a short answer as well. So I would definitely will practice one where you are doing a pricing which is cost plus, right? You have a cost plus whatever the profit that company's margined, and the second one is using the target sale price, right? So you're gonna have to look at the market and see what the pricing is, and then also looking at the cost where you may have a cost that you wanted to cover, and then that the company may ask you, says, what is the minimum bid you wanted to go for as well. So those are also great topics too. The life cycle budget, so that's also an important topic. So where I'll give you a product that company will estimate it has a life cycle of 2 years, 3 years, and they may come up with a different marketing scheme as, okay, well, we can sell this product with this price for next 3 years, and they come up with a second strategy, say, we'll kind of sell the product with a different pricing every year for the next 3 years, right, or 2 years, and then you have to look at the numbers to decide or help management which decision is more appropriate. So again, one question, definitely a short answer from here, and a few multiple choice. Then moving on to chapter 15, this is another chapter that's going to be covered as well. So in this case, we talked about a period cost. Everything we talked about before was focused on a product costing. So this chapter is where we talk about the period cost. So in this case, make sure you practice questions regarding single versus dual rate, right? So when you have a period cost, you can allocate the period cost using a single rate, or you can create a dual rate which kind of separated a certain amount of expenses, which is that typically is a fixed expense. We'll separate them, and we just based it on a rate, and then we allocate based on the budgeted fixed overhead, fixed expenses using a one rate, and then the other one will have the variable rate, which kind of we estimate the variable rate and multiply by the activity that happens during the year. So that's why we kind of separate in a dual rate. We have two different rates, one focused on the fixed cost for the period expenses or period cost, another one focused on the variable. Okay, so that's when you use dual method. Single method is you just look at the total amount that the company has for the period cost and divide it by whatever the drives that cost, and use that rate for allocation of all the period cost. Okay, so this is debatable as which method you use. Obviously the one with the dual rate method is more appropriate and gives you better cost allocation. uh, Obviously why you use one versus the other, look at the theory part as well. Then also another important piece, when you have a sport cost, so technically there are operating departments and then there's a sport departments as well. So those are costs that you have for the sport department need to be allocated to the operating departments. So in this one we have three different methods: direct, step down, and reciprocal. So for the quantitative part, I will focus on the first two. So how do we do a direct cost allocation? How do we do a step down cost allocation? So make sure you do these two topics and know how to what the process is for the allocation of the cost. This is again another important topic. The two important topic from this chapter that you may end up getting a small question is: one, allocation of the cost between single and dual method. Another one is the allocation of the cost, allocation of the sport department cost to the operating department using a direct allocation or a step down allocation. So these are the big chapters that going to have quantitative weightage around 95% of your exam. Then we have chapter 16, which I am covering this week, and I have posted the video for that. You may listen to the video after this lecture, or you try to do that during the reading week. So that way you have the understanding of the chapter 16 prior to your midterm as well. And then we'll do some homework question on this chapter when I meet you guys in person after our midterm. So this chapter, definitely some of the theory that I'll try to test you guys in your midterm exam. So what we're doing is we're looking at the product scrap or toxic waste. So it's all the byproducts that the company may have during the production. What do we do with those items, right? So those are covered here. And also, when we're looking at the product, you may have certain products that has a split up point where say, okay, well, I'm producing cream, for example, butter, and then you have other products that comes out of it as well, which is like skim milk or maybe a cream, or you have uh, yogurt that may come up. So in that case, what you have to do is we need to look at the cost as a joint cost for the company product, and then a separatable cost that will go in after the product is split into three different products from that raw material. So how does the cost allocation works for that? Okay, so I won't do a numerical question on this chapter, but the questions that I may pick from this topic is strictly on the MCQs. So maybe 2 to 3 MCQ from chapter 16, nothing more than that. Okay, so I'll definitely recommend. I'm not gonna get too much into chapter 16 because this is a midterm review. So I'll definitely will make recommend that you listen to the recording and maybe read the chapter prior to your exam. But don't worry about the homework question until you complete your midterm exam. Okay, so that is all about the review of each chapter. To practice, I recommend you to go back to your notes from each of the chapter, revisit at least one or two questions that I identify as an important. Practice it on your own. You guys have the answer, so you don't need to take any new question. Just focus on the one that I assigned as a homework, and you have the solution for that as well. Uh, Now, the format of your exam. Your exam is going to be a full class. So that technically means 2 hours 30 minutes. So we start exactly at 8 o'clock, and you will have the full class for your exam. So I'll put 2 hours 30 minutes. So we'll start and aim to finish it by 10:30. It is in class, and it is not Monday. It's not Tuesday. It's Monday on October 27th. The format of the midterm, you will have the MCQs, and those are mix of theory and calculation as well. So be prepared for the calculation for the MCQs. Have your calculator with you. It is important, and I won't be letting you use your cell phone for any reason. So you have to have a calculator. If you don't have it, you're gonna be using it manually and use your brain, your fingers, or paper to do the calculation. So make sure you have a calculator with you. Part B is going to be consist of 5 to 6 short answer question, and all the topics that I mentioned in all those chapter 9, 10, 11, 13, and 15. You will have these. So if I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so you have 5. So if I want to pick one question from each chapter, you will have 5 questions. If there is one question, one chapter which I feel you have multiple topics, I may split that into 2 questions. Okay, and I also identify the topics here from each chapter that I feel is good topics for me to test in a short answer. Variable costing, doing an income statement, allocation the cost using variable and fixed, decision making, right? So I may throw 1 or 2 questions from chapter 11, focus on making decisions on different things. Chapter 13, analyzing the product cost for pricing strategies, using whatever the strategy I'll ask you to do, maybe a life cycle of product or maybe a cost plus strategy. Chapter 15, cost allocation using single method, dual method, or using the step down method. So these are the topics that I may do from from a short answer question. As I mentioned earlier, go back, read your chapters, read your notes. You can skip the appendices from each chapter. Homework questions, try doing it from each of the chapters. I'm sure you have been doing your homework as that I'm assigning every week. If you're not doing it, guys, as I said earlier and many times in class, it is important to practice. Without practice, you can't do well in this course. So I will definitely say that at least try these homework questions once. And if you already did it, then I'll say, well, maybe pick 1 or 2 from each chapter again and just revisit those homework questions. If you have any question during the week before the midterm, send me an email. Okay, email is better for me to respond versus a course message. Send me an email on the golf number, email address that I shared with you guys earlier in my announcement, and then If you need somebody in person for help, we have an accounting center at the Humber College. I know some of the staff is on strike, but then there are students who are working there that may assist you as well on any of the topics that you need one-on-one help. Okay, so that is the end of the midterm review. After this, I recommend you guys to go back and listen to chapter 16. The solution for chapter 15 ag homework is already posted, so I'll recommend you to practice all the homework questions from there, which I identified in my last lecture as well when we met online. So chapter 15 homework questions are important. So we did some practice while we were doing the lecture as well. So for those ones, there are like one or two question from dual method, and also using the step down and direct allocation for the sport cost. Those are the two topics that I definitely want you to cover. Okay. So that is it from my end, guys. Good luck for your preparation of your midterm, and I will see you on October 27th. Okay, take care, everyone, and have yourself a great reading week and a good week next week. Take care. Bye for now.